So I wanted to point out that I'm not going to do this based on chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter whatever. I'm going to do it like these are my post-its. You know, you see sometimes writers will do like post-its and then they'll put them on this big cork board and then they'll try to find the timeline of the post-its because as things come back to them. Fencing was something that I was thinking about today. And breadcrumbs. Like I'm trying to like follow my breadcrumbs that bring me to where I am today. Yesterday I asked a young girl if she were to look back at all her breadcrumbs, does she see how she was on her path to where she is today? And she said that she can. And she goes way back. She goes way back to her littlehood. And I told her, I said, I kind of start Ritz at a softball game. I kind of start me at a softball game, but that's actually so not true. I could say I start me at camp. When I made up some story when I was 11 years old because I found somebody had done a project on a poster board and it had pictures, like actual Polaroid pictures on it. And I guess, you know, the whatever the class was or whatever the project was over. So it was in the garbage. Okay, it's not like I pulled it down off of a wall or something. It was in the garbage with those Polaroids on it. And it was Polaroids of a bunch of different horses, individual. And one of them had a little boy standing in a halter class, which I wouldn't have even understood that really that much because I wasn't a Western person, so I didn't really understand enough about like what Western disciplines were. So standing in a halter class with a Western, you know, fancy silver lined, you know, fancy halter or whatever, I wouldn't have actually like known what I was. So I couldn't say that that had anything to do with me, but I took that picture anyway, and I named that horse Bo. And I said that like to people who were, so let me back up on that a little bit. So I took those pictures and I put them in my personal possession and I created this story that now I'm 11 years old, okay? I'm 11 years old. I'm a horse trainer at 11 years old and I own 8 horses. And I had photographic proof. So when I met new people at camp, I had these pictures of these horses and these are my horses. And these 8 horses. So these are all horses that were on that poster board. And the one that had the little boy showing halter, well, even though I didn't have a little brother, that was my little brother. These are all people I was never going to see again. You know, and like that was like my theory. Like I fully like invented my story based on these won't ever be people I see again. And I could say my story of where I am today started there. Right? I claimed I had 8 horses. I claimed I was a horse trainer. Now I'm 11 years old. But somehow it didn't matter. That did not stop me from inventing this story about myself. Whether I was 11 years old or I was 30 years old, it would not matter to me. It felt as real to me at any point in my life, right? So I invent this story. And here's the thing about that story. Okay, first of all, I couldn't stop telling that story. I had some kind of, I would tell myself not to tell that story. You'll see this person again, or this person will meet your brother, or, right? Like I would tell myself, this is a stupid person to tell this story to, or this is a stupid story to tell this person to, because they're going to verify your story's bullshit. I didn't care. I just told my stories. And it was like an addiction. I had an addiction to that story. It would be even kind of interesting to see if anybody, whoever was told that story when they met me when I was little, you know, if they remember being told that story. And then I wonder if, like, you know, not only do they remember being told that story, they also knew it was bullshit. But so the part of it that made it believable, I guess, for myself is I I climbed on a pony that had never been ridden. I had no right to. I think that was my last day at that barn. I had no right to be on that pony. It wasn't my pony to climb on. It wasn't, my instructor pulled up the driveway, saw me sitting on this pony, which I had gotten bucked off of once or twice already before my instructor came up and saw me sitting on it, riding it around the field, bareback, bridleless. And I thought I did something really cool. Well, I did do something really cool had I been allowed to, but I did something really bad because I didn't have permission to do what I did. So I remember my instructor coming up the driveway, and I remember being in trouble. And I think I remember that being my last day. I don't think I was given permission to come back to that farm. But that was the beginning of my I break horses story, right? When I was 37 years old, I realized that story finally was true. I'm walking through my 8-stall barn. It wasn't my personal barn. I didn't own it, but I rented it. I was walking through my 8-stall barn full of horses as a horse trainer. The horses that were in that barn were horses that were there to be trained, besides, I think, 3 that were my own. That's when I said, holy crap. I wrote my story. I wrote who I am at 37. I wrote that when I was 11 years old. I told that story with such conviction, I couldn't even tell myself not to tell it. That's how much that story needed to be lived. And I think that's amazing. When you look back and you're like, holy crap, that story was completely fabricated. The only thing, it was based off of, a few things that I could say I believe to be fact. Like I said, I sat on a little pony that wasn't broke yet, and I tamed it. And, I rode it, bridleless and bareback. So there's my bridleless and bareback part of my life. But like that, I took that little tidbit and turned it into a profession. And I'm 11 years old. I'm telling people this story that I'm a professional horse trainer, and I'm 11 years old. And I own 8 horses. I owned a horse. Maybe not even at 11. I don't think I owned a horse at 11. I don't think I got hat-tricked till I was 12. I had owned horses prior to that, but I didn't own a horse at that time. Definitely didn't own a horse when I was at camp, I don't think. I don't think I would have left my horse and gone to horse camp. I don't think so. But anyway, but because even while I was at camp, because I told that story, I was allowed to ride the green horse. I was allowed to spend all my time with a little 5-year-old mare who was not suitable for the program because she was just too green. She was not safe yet. And that was the horse I was assigned because I was a horse trainer, right? And I loved it. I felt so full of myself. I felt so, this is who I want to be. I want to be at a barn, and I hate to say this, but I want to be more important than anyone else. And, this is me, my 11-year-old self, okay? So, like, don't everybody get all huffy up now. My 11-year-old self liked how that felt, to walk around the barn with the special privileges of a horse no one else was allowed to play with, a horse no one else was allowed to touch, a horse that was being educated by me. Now, I'm not going to lie, I do have, a talent with horses that showed at 11 years old. So it wasn't like I was playing with this horse and not, she was the horse that I was assigned. She was the horse that I used every day. It's not like I said I could do something and then they saw I was in danger. You know what I mean? Like, the only thing that happened that was one of the most humbling experiences that ever happened to me. And I will never, ever forget it because it helped me be a better horse person. At the end, they have a show. And like when your parents come pick you up, and it's like this like final show of your stay. So, it was kind of a big deal. Well, I'd been working with this 5-year-old horse, this green 5-year-old horse, the entire camp stay. And I think I stayed 2 weeks that year. And when it came time for the show, I was told I can't take her. I can't. She's not the horse I'm going to be using. And they assigned me some other horse I didn't even know. And I was pissed. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I was pissed, and my attitude was absolutely horrendous. Like, my parents, anybody, should have been ashamed of who I was becoming that day. And I got on this horse that I hadn't been riding my whole entire time there. And I got out on the jump course, and I'm yanking that horse around, like left, right, and I was very, very, very disrespectful to the horse. And the instructors, actually, the instructors and the owner of the farm, so the instructor and the owner of the farm came into the arena and called me into the center. And when they did that, they grabbed the reins, under the throat, like both reins in their hand. And then they motioned and expressed for me to dismount. I dismounted, and then they told me to leave. I was dismissed from the arena because I was abusing that horse with my attitude, with my emotions. Everything about what I was doing was abusive to that horse. So they got rid of me that day. And it was the best thing they ever did to me. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. I would never, ever, ever say that something bad about that happening. Sorry about the lighting. So, anyway, that's one of my breadcrumbs. Like, holy crap. That's actually 2 of them when you think about it. Right? I learned how to be fair to horses and how to not let what you're emotionally experiencing. I was emotionally experiencing frustration, anger, embarrassment, because now here, my parents are coming, and I've been working. So embarrassment too with my peers who I had treated probably poorly because I thought I was hot shit. And now I've been demoted, right? So maybe I was embarrassed, amongst my peers that now I have to ride one of the other horses for this particular thing. And, probably because they didn't feel the horse was ready for this event. You know what I mean? And they didn't want to see me have a bad time, perhaps. I don't know, what the logic was behind why I wasn't allowed to use the horse. It doesn't really matter. But I think the lesson that I learned was such a valuable lesson in not bringing your shit to the horse, right? Don't bring your shit to the horse. And now I'm a huge, huge advocate of don't bring your shit to the horse, right? Your horse, it's not your horse's fault you had a bad day. It's not your horse's fault that the reason you're at the barn is because you stomped out of your house because you and your husband had a fight. Don't mistreat your horse because, kids were mean to you at school, and now you're at the barn where your horse should be your solitaire, not your punching bag. Don't go to the barn and let your horse be punished for how you are mad at someone else. I was mad at the farm for taking away something from me, and they took it away from me like that day. I remember not knowing it was going to not be, and so my emotions were extremely raw. They weren't even soaked on it, angry for the night kind of thing. They were extremely raw, and I took it out on that horse. I took my anger of what I was just being. So I'm so glad that that happened to me. I'm so glad that I learned that then and didn't, go through life mistreating horses because I brought my shit to the barn, right? And I hope that if I have any influence on people, that's the one thing I can definitely teach is don't bring your shit to the barn. So anyway, so that's a breadcrumb. So like I said, I'm probably not going to do this as chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. I might say breadcrumb number 3, like this is breadcrumb number 3. I have plenty of other stories, but I think that one was a fun one. And if I have enough memory on my phone, I'll tell you another one this morning. If I don't, then you're just going to have to wait. But thanks for listening.